Hello and welcome to our episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I am very excited to be joined here in the studio by Mike Clarke from Mallon Associates. Mike, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So, listen, an interesting space that you're in at the moment, and I think it's probably one which is sort of underplayed a little bit, has been underplayed. We do a lot of work in the business talking about companies and how they can improve their retention, how they can improve their hiring, how they can keep talent within their business. It becomes one of the things where this is an industry, fintech, which has traditionally been pretty poor at keeping hold of its talent. I think it's a statistic I sort of talk about a lot, which is less than 18 months is the average tenure of a software engineer, which is no time really at all when you're making significant investments into people. Right. Yet when we see some of the most effective businesses, it's all built around the people who they have in the team. So being able to attract, engage and retain the best talent becomes a superpower for those businesses. People talk about beanbags and table tennis tables. People talk about weekends away and culture trips and all that sort of stuff. But realistically, there's a lot more to it than that. One of them is, in my mind, has always been about having the best people around you in your environment and your team. The other one has been about how you invest in that talent to help them move further forward. Now, you guys are in a really unique position there, talking about helping people develop and helping companies make sure they are educating and developing that talent within it. And we've got loads of fascinating stuff to jump into on that. Yeah. So I'm going to kick off though by giving you the opportunity to just do a bit of an introduction. So Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and then the business as well.
Yeah, sure. No, I completely agree with everything that you've just been saying. So I started out as a software engineer actually. Okay. That was kind of my training and my passion from when I was very young actually, and from there I sort of went and did a PhD, which I actually didn't finish. And the reason I didn't, the reason I didn't finish it is because I started teaching at the university that I was doing my PhD in, and that was just more interesting to me than actually finishing my PhD. Yeah. So I ended up getting into education from software engineering into doing a PhD, and that kind of dragged me into the education kind of direction. Yeah. And after a couple of years of working at Aberystwyth University, I moved into corporate training for Mallon Associates. Mm-hmm. And so Mallon Associates were a relatively small training company. We focus on customized training for organizations, so not generic training, but really proprietary training. We've been around for over 35 years now. And we operate globally. So despite the fact that we're relatively small, we've got some pretty large financial and fintech clients who we've been supporting for throughout those 35 years. Many of our clients have been with us for the full 35 years.
That's a good testament, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
And you've moved through the ranks there?
Yeah, so I started out as an instructor. Yeah. I remember my very first teaching engagement in Mumbai in India.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good one to catch first up.
Yeah, it was not planned. First was, can you go to New York? And I said yes. And then they said, but actually, can you do 3 months in India instead? So off I went to India.
Amazing experience.
It was brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. It was my first time really properly traveling. Actually, really properly traveling, doing that. So. And then from there I kind of worked up from being just an instructor to worked as a COO for a bunch of years, and now I'm the CEO. Yeah, after our chairman, CEO Dave at the time became the chairman and took a step back.
Superb! What a great journey.
Yeah, definitely.
And so this whole thing, as we mentioned, we're recruit, engage, retain is something I talk about a lot. And I think that engagement and retention piece is something that so many companies don't get right. Education often very at the heart of that. I speak to a lot of people. We do this top 1% workplace awards, and we interview hundreds of companies every single year about what makes them a great place to work within the financial technology space. And one of the things I'm always think is a little bit devoid when people are talking about it. There's some really good stuff that people do, but I've never had really great examples of where people are really innovating and thinking about the education of their people within teams. Sometimes it's a little bit about, paired programming, which is great, and you can pick up stuff there. Sometimes it's by osmosis. But to have a formulaic program that really allows people to be embedded into that business and see themselves develop is something there which I think has long been missing, which is why I'm so fascinated with what you're doing and how you're going into it. So I know you've got thoughts about the attraction and retention piece, and how do you fit into that whole world?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. FinTech organizations, they're competing on product, but they're also competing on talent, and they've got to keep talent. And the educational opportunities that they present and that they offer to their talent are really important for those engineers to feel invested in the company, to be enfranchised with the company that they're working for. You've got to give those engineers the tools that they actually need to be able to perform the job that you're asking them to do. And that actually means narrowing the gap between what they might have from sort of generic training and generic education to understanding and delivering training that is highly proprietary, highly customized around your proprietary technology stack. Now, I like to think your tech stack is unique, and so your training that supports that tech stack needs to be unique as well, and it needs to really represent your application, your technologies. So I think that's a huge sort of initial place to start when you're thinking about how can we really make new hires and experienced and lateral hires and wherever they're coming from, how can we really make them feel valued, like we're investing in their career?
It's really interesting you say that, because I'm thinking of two conversations in my head from earlier on today that I've had that feeds exactly into this. One of which is a person talking about someone who'd worked for them before, and it was kind of like a reference scenario for it. And they said this guy was fantastic, really popular person, really great for the team, and they said, but it's our fault we hired someone who didn't have the skill set to come up to that sort of level. Now I wonder what would happen if that was the right person who'd just been invested in a little bit more and had a program that could have got them to that level, and how much that would, time and effort that would have saved them, and money that would have saved them in the process. And the second one is a conversation I had with a fantastic leader today, who's built an incredible business. Like you, a software engineer by origin, and came into a CEO role. And when he's talking about everything he was talking about today was about making sure that he thought through the eyes of a software engineer as he was building a business, and invested in those people, and thought about their sort of their care and development alongside that. And I think when people start to do that, it becomes a real opportunity for people to grow and develop and have that brand loyalty and think about it in that sort of way as well.
That's right. You've got to capture, from your senior engineers, from your senior developers, you've got to really capture the knowledge that they hold. So that you can take that knowledge, distill that knowledge, and offer it to your junior developers in such a way that they can learn from that they can understand the business, that they can understand the technology, because the tech stack is the business, right? And so they've got to, you've got to be able to capture that knowledge in an efficient way so that you can enable that learning. The reality is that even a month of high quality, really focused training at the start of a graduate's career in a fintech or in a bank, or can ultimately lead that individual to be more productive than somebody who's just been trying to learn through osmosis on the job for 6 months working in that organization. So it can really kickstart, if you get it right, it can really kickstart someone's career, so that they can really grow in your organization.
And kickstart your investment into that individual at the same sort of time as well.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you sort of point at that particular play, because I think there's so many people there who, you mentioned the word osmosis there, and I think that's generally the sort of way that people do things. They say, right, we've got people who are super talented engineers, go in there and watch what they do and repeat it.
Exactly.
And they'll tell you various bits and pieces. But those, you mentioned your calling. You go in there and you do your PhD, and then you realise actually it's the education piece that's within that. That's a different skill set from being from doing an engineering job. And quite often we see these people thrust into leadership positions because they are the most talented engineer, where they might not necessarily be the best, the most talented person to tell them how people to do that. And particularly in technology, and I'm sort of preaching to the converted here, right? But so often it's like, well, it's obvious, this is how you do it. And the frustration then of being able to see people not be able to replicate that as, well, they're rubbish, et cetera, get them out, they don't listen to what they're being told. But actually it's sometimes the messaging around that. And this is why I think it's so important that companies like yours are able to put, to come into this, to fill that void and actually give people the chance to succeed. So many good, talented individuals are lost to industry because they're not set up for, right at the very start of their careers.
That's right. You've got to capture that knowledge. You've got to be able to distill and present that knowledge to your hires, especially your new hires. And I think if we think about the kind of services that we offer, where we start when we're looking at an organisation that's trying to upskill new graduates, we always start with actually capturing knowledge. So let's go in, send technical writers in, right, into an organisation, speak with SMEs, understand the technology stack that the organisation is using. In many ways, we end up testing the technology stack to hell, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not because we've got a problem to solve, we're trying to fix their technology stack in any way, but in order to truly understand it, in order to really deeply get what's actually happening there, to be able to teach that, we end up pushing the technology stack that the organization has developed in ways that even the developers themselves weren't thinking about. And so we actually end up, there's value, even sort of additional value that comes from this process to the organization. You get third-party validation of your ideas, of your technology stack. You define a vocabulary that everybody can use to understand what it is that you've invented. So that's really the starting point, is a deep understanding of a company's technology stack, capturing that information from those senior engineers, and then from there it opens up all sorts of opportunities for building training that's really going to help not just kickstart new graduates, but even continue to develop existing talent within the organization. So of course we can do those graduate programs where people come in fresh from college, and we want to give them the tools that they need. We want to make sure that they can understand from day one the technology, to narrow that gap that I was talking about earlier, to the real systems that they're going to be working on, so that they can really start to solve problems early, through to training programs for existing hires that take them further, that give them opportunity to progress within the organization. It's not just about investing at the beginning of the career.
Yeah.
If you want to hold and maintain your talent, you've got to keep investing throughout their career, and even one-on-one coaching opportunities for senior engineers or that actually want to really push themselves further, because there's always opportunity. Technology doesn't stand still. There's always opportunity to grow and develop.
So this is interesting, because we do a candidate survey every year as well, and we look at some of the things that are most important to developers and engineers and everywhere across it. And when we're talking to people, it changes a little bit year on year, depending on what's happening in the marketplace. And obviously, as you'd imagine, over the last couple of years with cost of living, etc., money has actually played more of a part within that sort of process. But it never was. It was never the most important part of it, and I still don't necessarily think it is. I think people are looking at it and saying, look, most people we'll be looking at a 40-year career at least in what they're doing. So they want to have something there which can take them for the second half of their career and something which puts them at the top of the higher echelons of it, rather than rinse and repeat. So this has got to be about having something there where they're seeing investment, they're seeing development, they're seeing progress. And when companies aren't investing in development and progress, they're investing in rehiring people who are moving on from that, right?
Yeah, a lot of companies will talk about, the cost associated with running these graduate programs, and should we be spending this much? Should we be cutting it down? Can we just push them out to a generic online learning platform, whatever it happens to be? But you've got to look at it from a couple of perspectives, right? First of all, there's the value associated with that proprietary training versus the generic. The generic is not going to close that gap. So if you do that, you might be saving some money up front, but long term you're not. Yeah. You've also lost that investment, that loyalty with those engineers. There is huge loss in value when you do that. If you sort of take away any customizable aspects of the training of the graduate programs that you're running, if you start to cut back on that investment, you're disenfranchising your engineers. You're disenfranchising those developers. The gap that you're trying to shorten isn't getting shortened. So you might spend less money up front, but long term, you're losing out in so many other ways. Those people are not going to be as effective on day one. They're not going to be as effective throughout their first 6 months in their career with you. They're not going to have the skills that they need to be able to be mobile within your organization. They're not going to understand your proprietary technologies. You're going to end up having to spend money in other ways. They're also more likely to leave you because you've not shown them that you're invested in them. You've not given them any inclination that you actually value them, that you want them to become better. It's so important that when we're looking at these graduate programs, that it isn't just about bean counting, just about how many dollars are we spending per head. And I understand that businesses, they want to reduce their costs, but you've got to look at the value. How much more value are you getting out of somebody who comes out of a 1-month program and is productive for the next 5 months than somebody who is still trying to learn over that 6-month period and spends the first 4 or 5 months not actually being productive for your organization? It's
an incredible false economy, isn't it, when people look at that and just say, right, okay, we'll cut here, we'll cut there, and then they realize that even 6 months, 12 months, so 2 years down the line, it's something that comes back and haunts them afterwards. I think the other thing that you mentioned and touched upon there was it, and have done all the way through, is this sort of customizery piece, whatever we want to talk about it. It becomes incredibly significant in what you guys do and how it differentiates.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of off-the-shelf, teach yourself programming and type things there which are massively generic. People do that to tick a box, say we've got a training program, we'll put someone on there, but it never actually develops that person's loyalty or interest or significance within that business. And I love what you guys were talking about, the documentation side of it, the testing things, the getting under the hood, speaking to people within that. That to me is exactly what this needs to be all about. That to me is about making sure you've got something that's absolutely fit to purpose and bespoke and tailored. Because so many training programs are just, there are a number of different suppliers to our industry. And my big worry about it is that's not our DNA. That's not the way we do things. And so we tailor it internally and build things through. My problem with that is I'm not a trainer, I'm not an educator. I haven't gone through the same sort of programs that you've been through. And I think the ones that I really get excited about engaging with in my business is those ones who understand you and are an extension of your business. And I think that's very much the special secret for you, right?
That's exactly the way that we try to operate. When we come into an organization to build these training programs, we become part of the organization that we're training for. That's why our relationships last 35 years, right? Because we're not just another vendor, we are a true partner. We integrate with the organization, we get onboarded with the organization, we use the organization's environment, whether that's their build tools, their deployment practices, practices, their coding standards. In training, it's also not just about the things that you are teaching, but what about the things you're not, right? There might be a particular piece of a programming language or feature that an organization doesn't want to use for some technical reason. A generic training program or generic training course doesn't know that, right? So they'll teach it to your engineers, and your engineers will be frustrated that they can't now use this feature of this language, but that could have all been avoided if you'd actually not had something that was generic, if you'd actually given the rationale to the engineers about why you've made choices, about why your tech stack is the way that it is, about the reasons that you're using certain bits of technology and not other bits of technology, about the way that you're using that technology within your organization, and even for something that you might consider to be generic, like a C++ course or a Java course or a Python course. There is still opportunity to customize even the traditionally generic courses to your organization in a way that delivers better value. Yeah,
and better value is an important part of that, because let's bring in the pantomime villain into the conversation here, which is a word that I don't think a FinTech Focus this year hasn't had at some sort of stage, which is AI.
Yeah.
So I imagine there'll be a lot of people at the moment saying that one of the most one of the areas which is ripe for automation would be sort of online training, et cetera, et cetera. So you can bring it in there. You have a chatbot that's talking to you and coming through and delivering this sort of thing, and it's easy and it's swift, and you can get someone on there, tick a box, et cetera, which is a word I've used a couple of times, because it feels to me like a lot of training is box ticking as opposed to bespoke. I think that everyone's got to try and justify themselves against AI at the moment, and everyone's got to sort of have the counterbalance to why the human can do it better within that. How do you guys pitch that, and how do you utilize it, engage it, bring it in, or otherwise?
Yeah, so AI, AI, and of course when we're talking about AI, we're talking about generative AI realistically, and large language models. AI is an important tool, but it is a tool. It is not an instructor. It is not a trainer. The reality is that AI can make us as trainers, us as documentation writers, more effective. It can help us to be more aligned. It can help us to re-describe things. It can help us to understand things. But what it doesn't do is it does not provide understanding of an organization. It doesn't provide the insight that humans can have into an organization. So we can use it, for example, to take the documentation that we've built for an organization on their proprietary trading stack or on their proprietary algorithms or whatever it happens to be, and we can create chatbots that sit on top of that documentation to help developers. And those are all great things, and things that we should be doing, but it is not suitable for actually initial training. AI
is augmentation as opposed to replacement.
Exactly. It's not replacement. The reality is AI, we get hallucinations, it lies. The way that I like to think about it was people talk about Copilot. We've got a Copilot for writing this code and Copilot for writing that code. I think it's a really interesting choice of word, Copilot, because if you think about a plane, you've got a pilot and you've got a co-pilot, and they're both fully trained pilots. They can both fly that plane. So if something happens to the pilot, the co-pilot can autonomously, safely fly that plane. I would not trust the co-pilot, an AI co-pilot, to fly the plane, because what it would do is it would encounter a situation it's never seen before, and it would go, I don't know what to do here, so I'll make something up. I'll just do a 90-degree bank turn.
I've got this image in my head that will lose most of the audience, but if you've seen Airplane or Airplane 2, the sequel, those comedy films with a pop-up, blow-up, a pilot, co-pilot comes in. It feels very much down that sort of route as well.
And we've got to distinguish here between generative AI and other technologies, because clearly there are systems that can fly planes. But the way generative AI cannot. Right. So why should we trust it to write our software? Why should we trust it to develop our engineers? Because what it will do is it will lie. So at best, At best, AI is as good as generic training. At worst, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because what it will do is it will train people in the wrong things. It will give advice that's incorrect. It will lead people down a path where they don't understand what it is that they're actually developing, what they're reading, what they're working with.
Exactly.
And so what people need is yes, use AI, but they need that human guidance, especially when they're learning, to help them understand and evaluate what the AI is producing, and to say, well, actually, what it said is not right, is not the way you should do this. This is a better way. Here's why this is a better way. Here's why what that produced was dangerous.
And I'm thinking now to where you've got this utopian world where you have sort of the AI to allow to follow up and re-embed the messages. You've got real training that helps people skill up and upskill in that sort of area, and then strong mentorship within the business to bring it to life alongside that. And when those work in harmony, it's a really exciting position.
Absolutely.
There's a much heralded sort of LinkedIn meme that comes up quite a lot, which basically talks about the CFO and the CEO. What happens if I train them and they leave? The investment loss in that, and the CEO replying, what happens if we don't train them and they stay? Seems to be very much at the core of what you're talking 100%. About, right? So this myth of, should we be investing in people? What happens if we put all of that time and effort into people and they go off and take it elsewhere and they feel hard done by? The answer's pretty clear here, right? Yeah.
I mean, the idea that of course, people worry about retention, but if you've invested in people, you've given them opportunity to grow. What sort of two things become possible? One, the mobility that you get for that person means that they're actually more likely to stay anyway, because they're more highly skilled. That means that they're open to more opportunity within your organization. So especially for larger organizations anyway, there's more chance that they will move internally rather than out, right? But where they do move out, what you're actually need to look at is how many of them come back, right? Because it's okay looking at the dropout rate, but what about the return rate? Those people will feel like they've been invested in. They will feel like you as an organization have set them up for their career. They'll go out, they'll work somewhere else for a year or two, and then they'll come back to you because of the values that your company holds, because of the investment that you've given them. And so they will come back even more valuable to you, because they'll come back with new experiences, new ideas, other technologies that they've seen, other ways of solving problems. So you've enabled that growth. But even those who don't come back, they become advocates for your technology, for your organization. So effectively, what you want to do is you want to take programmers, graduates, and turn them into experts. And then from experts, you want to turn them into advocates for you, your organization, and your technology stack. And so yes, there will be some people who leave, but that isn't a bad thing. Because some of them will come back.
And if you can keep them longer as well at the same time, that's another aspect.
Exactly, before they leave. Exactly. And how useful are they to you before they leave as well?
Exactly, I mean, we were talking beforehand, and I couldn't remember the exact data behind this, but there's enormous difference between someone there who is a high-performing individual to a median individual. And if you had like 2-3 people who are performing at this level, the cost value of that person who's performing at a higher level dwarfs the investment everywhere else you're looking at. And I don't think people think about that enough.
No.
I don't think people think about the importance of A players, which is, I think is an overused term a little bit, but actually having those people in there at the very top of their game and how much more they can do than an average employee. But I also love the fact you're talking there about the boomerang generation and people coming back into your business. I feel like even more, and I think this is becoming more and more prevalent as well, there's a lot of people, let's talk if you're a fintech vendor, and you've invested in this, and you've got the hedge funds who will be circling around there afterwards, and paying in some instances double for that talent to then move on to it. You can't keep that talent, but what you can do is make sure you're treating them really well all the way through that.
That's right.
Keep them that little bit longer, and then when they go over to those organisations and they become evangelical about what you're talking about, the value of that can be incredibly higher in terms of what you're doing there.
Exactly, absolutely, and then that opens up all sorts of other areas that you could start to look at. Could you could you provide some sort of certification on your stack, on your technology, that those people who are going out now to these different organizations could take with them, to continue pushing your product, to continue pushing your, your technology stack.
I think Mark Benioff's done that very well over at Salesforce, hasn't he, with it becoming a sort of community afterwards, and people moving out into that thing. Yeah. An evangelist is exactly what that becomes. I want to touch on something else that you've sort of coined, which is talking about knowledge transfer rather than training. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think what we're ultimately looking to do is to organizations, they have their technologies, they have their stack, and there's sort of training on how to use it and how to work with it, but then there's understanding why it's built the way it is, how it works. We kind of talk about the three key things. What is it? How does it work? And why is it the way that it is? And training often tends to just focus on the what, right? What is it? And maybe a little bit of how do you use it?
Yeah, transactional training.
But exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas knowledge transfer is actually understanding the way things work.
Yeah.
Being able to grasp the fundamentals, the rationale, the reasoning, because actually that becomes not just useful to a particular product, but it actually becomes transferable to other technologies and to other products that you might be working on. So for me, that's kind of where the differences lie. And
it becomes a sort of embedded in-house training team within the business, an extension of the business because of the way you're dealing with it. It's not just here's a program that we put people on, as I say, used it before to tick a box. This is part of our business. This is something there which, and again, when you talk about it being customizable, it will evolve as well, I'm sure.
Of course.
You've worked with companies for 30 odd years. There's no way that you're training the same technology.
The graduate programs we do now are very different to the 30-year-old versions of those. Yeah,
less abacuses are used these days in the training.
And it's because of our embedded nature.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we become SMEs in those organizations.
Yeah.
Right? Because we talk to, you imagine an organization that has a trading system and it's got lots of different components and different teams work on different bits of that. So the teams that work on one part really understand that bit, and the teams that work on another part really understand this bit. What we come and do is we come in and we look at all of those parts and we talk to all of those teams and to all of the SMEs in all of those teams, and we build not just a depth of knowledge on every single bit of that system, but also the breadth across that system, so that we actually sometimes become the people who actually know the whole system end to end and the details of each bit. And so in those organizations, not only do we teach their graduate hires, we then teach the engineers that we've been talking to about the other parts of the system that they don't know, because they're so focused in the weeds on the bit that they're working on. So we can enable that knowledge transfer not just from those SMEs to your graduates, but even across your SME bits to spread out and to get better integration of teams. And
I think that's an really important word that you mentioned there, the integration piece of it. I think so many companies still in technology operate in silos.
That's right.
And the ability there to have things where people have got, that's that sort of, I always think about it like the SAS. Everyone in an SAS squadron will have a certain element of skill set, a number one skill set. But if someone gets taken out, they've got the opportunity to fill in on the other areas and still work to a high level. And that to me is what outstanding training is all about. Being able to have someone there who are rounded, who are company orientated, who aren't just sat there, but are the best for the company. And it feels like that's very much where you're situated.
And that's kind of to what something I mentioned earlier was this idea that depth is important, but breadth is too.
Yeah.
Even in first graduate level programs that are focused on day one readiness, yes, great. But breadth is important too, because you've got to give them that ability to be able to put their hand at different things, not just one thing.
You mentioned obviously a long stint of service into this industry. FinTech's a broad space. What sort of companies are you helping out with? What sort of companies should be investing into you? Where's the sweet spot for people within the as I say, fintech is everywhere from tier one investment banks all the way through to startup, payments firms.
Yeah.
Do you have a sweet spot, or is it again generic?
No, we work with actually all of that range. So we do have tier one investment banks that we work for, who have worked with us for over those 35 years, and we have sort of smaller startups and mid-range fintech companies that we work for, hedge funds that we do stuff for too. So we're actually across the industry.
Fantastic. And you mentioned a lot about obviously the engineering side of things. Is it across the whole world of technology that you're working?
Yes, absolutely. So anything that's technology orientated, whether that's software engineering, but also infrastructure and all those kind of things as well, and even sort of periphery data science, for example, and that and machine learning and data analytics and those kind of things as well.
I mean, that's such an important area and so evolving at the moment as well. So let's put that in. Okay, great. And talk to me a little bit about the company itself. As you say, 35 years in, you've gone from water boy through to CEO within the business. What's your vision? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah, so I think at the moment we're focused on growth. That's what we're looking to do. We've got some really strong, organisations that we've worked with for a long time, and they're all bread and butter, and that's fantastic. But we want more organisations to have better training, right? To have better investment in their people, and so that's what we're looking to do at the moment. We're looking to grow to more organisations,
bang the drum, spread the word,
to help more organisations with their training and their retention.
It's such a noble cause, and when you're hearing people sort of push back a little bit on that, I presume it's about time and money are the principal things that come through. How do you justify that? How do you get over that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What we sometimes find is that
or we have our own program or whatever it is.
Yeah, sometimes it's people who have their own program. What we actually find is that a lot of the time the sort of mid-level down are actually quite keen and interested in having this training. They want the training, they want the what they struggle to get usually is internal budget, right? So it's when a lot of where we struggle is getting past the sort of the mid-level to actually those people internally getting the budget that they need. And it'll be all the things that we've talked about. It'll be like, well, we're spending this much on training. Well, we already have training. Or, well, we've just spent this on, e-learning platform X or whatever. So we don't need this training. But again, it's the value associated with that kind of training versus the customized, the proprietary. There's not just the value in the training itself. It's the embedded nature that I was talking about that we bring. There's so much that the organisations could gain through having a company like us come in and really build learning into their organisation as a culture, as part of their modus operandi.
And I think the companies who do that get it.
That's right.
Those companies generally tend to outperform the industry.
Absolutely.
And as you say, attract the best people, retain the best people, and engage them. And when you've got engaged employees and you're able to attract the best people into it, it's a formula for great success. Absolutely. And I think you guys are at the hub of that. So if people are watching it, want to reach out, find out a little bit more from you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Just visit our website, Mallon.Associates.
Fantastic.
No .com or anything, just Mallon.Associates.
You heard it here first. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you very soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.